Good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you may be watching this. My name is Adam Decker, and today I'll be presenting my findings on the O&SHA report of the American Airlines Flight 587 catastrophe. First, I'll start by describing the system. The system involved was an Airbus Industry A300-605. Like any other aircraft, the A300 has two main wings that we see here in the front or the middle of the aircraft. We also see the engines attached to the two main wings. Towards the rear of the aircraft, sticking horizontally out of the plane, we have the horizontal stabilizers, and then on top of the aircraft towards the back, we can see the vertical stabilizer. The Airbus involved in this crash has two levels of seating. In total, these two levels could hold 266 passengers in a two-class arrangement. On most flights of the Airbus, there were 7 flight attendants and 2 pilots making up the crew of the aircraft. The overall length of the aircraft is 175.9 feet. The wingspan of the A300 is 147.1 feet. And the operating weight of the is 364,000 pounds. And it cruises at an altitude of 35,000 feet. Next, we have operation and maintenance. How the system is supposed to work. All aircraft have similar parts that are essential to their function. First, we have the wings of the aircraft. The wings are in a special shape called an airfoil. This shape is curved along the top but flat on the bottom. The incongruency of the size causes air to travel around its edges at different speeds. The air that goes over the top must go faster, creating a low pressure zone, and the air that goes along the flat bottom must go slower, and it creates a high pressure zone. The high pressure below it and the low pressure above it pushes the plane into the air and generates what we call lift. Next, we have the engines. In the case of the Airbus, it has 2 jet engines. The jet engines work by dumping jet fuel into the engines, which is burned. The energy from burning the jet fuel spins turbines. These turbines suck air and whatever else may be in front of the aircraft into the engines and forces it out the back. This forcing the air out of the back generates thrust, which propels the aircraft forward. Lastly, all aircraft must have rudders if they want to turn. These rudders are movable fixtures on the rear of the wings and vertical stabilizer that act to alter the airflow around them and turn the aircraft. Now we have key analysis findings. So what went wrong in the American Airlines Flight 587? The obvious cause of the crash was the detachment of the vertical stabilizer shortly after takeoff. But why did it detach? Well, shortly before Flight 587 took off, a Boeing 747 took off from the same runway. As a result, Flight 587 ended up flying into the wake of the Boeing 747. When Flight 587 entered the wake, the aircraft felt like it was stalling, and the pilot stated, "We're stuck in it," meaning the wake of the 747. To try and escape this wake, the pilot used the rudder pedals to try and turn the rudder on the vertical stabilizer and get the aircraft out of the wake. The National Transportation Safety Board ruled that these were, quote, excessive and unnecessary movements of the vertical stabilizer rudder, back and forth, causing the rudder to experience a weight upwards of 3 times of that what it was supposed to. This caused the vertical stabilizer to snap off of the aircraft midair. Shortly after, the spinning of the unstable aircraft caused both engines to detach and land in residential areas, killing 5 people. Shortly after these events, Flight 587 crashed into the ground, killing all 260 passengers on board. Now, there's not many recommendations you can make for the structure of the aircraft because the aircraft had been inspected regularly and was up to code, everything like that. For the most part, pilot training as well as takeoff procedures are the areas that I would focus on. The National Transportation Safety Board recommended that pilots go through additional training to teach them how to react in situations experienced similar to that of Flight 587. I would completely agree with this, as the pilot's actions were what caused the system to fail. Understanding that a full rotation of the rudder to one direction, immediately followed by a full rotation in the opposite direction, can cause catastrophic system failure like that of Flight 587. It is crucial that pilots understand that so we avoid repeating this accident in the future. I would personally recommend longer delays between takeoff of aircraft. If that wake had more time to clear out, the pilot of Flight 587 wouldn't have flown into it in the first place, and the entire accident may have been avoided, saving all 265 lives lost. Rack number and justification. So, the risk assessment code that I assigned this accident is a 1D. To categorize this as anything under catastrophic is foolish. In total, 265 people were killed. This number includes the 251 passengers, the 7 flight attendants, the 2 pilots, as well as the 5 people on the ground that were killed by the falling engines after they detached from the aircraft. There's also the loss of product to factor in. The loss of a commercial jet like this is a loss of tens of millions of dollars to the company. However, even without the loss of the jet, the human lives lost in the accident is enough to justify this as a Category 1 severity. While the severity is high, the probability is actually pretty low. I ranked it as a D, which is right above negligible. The one thing that keeps this from being negligible is how catastrophic the event is when it occurs. So while based off of the number of flights that take off and land on a daily basis, the accidents in those flights are extremely rare. So I have to imagine that the detachment of a vertical stabilizer is even more rare. So while it is extremely unlikely that it happens, we cannot rule it as negligible because of how catastrophic it can be when it does happen. Because of this, I'm ranking it as a 1D. So, in conclusion, the death of 265 people is not something to be taken lightly. Recommendations from the National Transportation Safety Board should be seriously considered and implemented. The additional training on how to react to flying into the wake of another aircraft should be mandatory for all commercial aircraft pilots, especially. All safety inspections required for the aircraft had been conducted, 2 of which had taken place within a week of the accident. One standard that, if adhered to more strictly, could have saved the lives can be found in 14 CFR 25.391 entitled Yawing Conditions. The section states, unbalanced aerodynamic moments about the center of gravity must be reacted in a rational and conservative manner considering the principal masses furnishing the reacting inertia forces. In American Airlines Flight 587, the pilot's reactions of excessive input to a tail rudder was not rational and led to the excess stress on the vertical stabilizer. In the end, the stress was too much and the vertical stabilizer detached, causing the massive loss of life. These are my sources cited. Thank you for your time.